Hey there, everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm Spike Hyssong, and there it is. I guess it's the trendy thing to do now, to go on YouTube and talk about your record collections, and I've had people ask me, when am I going to do mine? So I'm finally jumping on the bandwagon. Here is my video of my record collection, and I've got records. You don't believe me? Let's take a look. Alright, we've got 12-inch classical 78 RPM book sets. Oh, yes, and milk crates filled with records on my panning over here. Yes, 10-inch 78 RPM records. I am a record collector. Woe is me. Those are 10-inch 78 RPM children's records, mostly Peter Pan's and Golden records. Some Children's Record Guild. 10-inch book sets, 78 RPM. Lots of them. Not surprising, we've got more 78s, 12-inchers. Some of my favorite jazz 10-inch 78s. And what is this? What is this doing in my collection? Oh. That's just a stray that appeared mysteriously on my doorstep. You know, when you're a record collector, you become a depository for wayward records. 12-inch LPs, all jazz and big band. More records. Messy, messy. Alright, a mixture of 12-inch 78 RPM book sets and LPs. Yikes, not at all organized. My chair, more 12-inch 78 RPM classical book sets. Here we are out in the hallway, and these are the extent of my 7-inch 45s and children's 78s. CDs and such. That door goes to my bathroom. There are no records in there. At least none that I can recall. Well, is it any surprise that I've got some records in the kitchen? Alright, my Victrola that I had gotten when I was around 14 years old. It was my pride and joy back then. Still my pride and joy. Houses mostly acoustic records, 10-inch, a smattering of 12, but mostly 7-inch and 8-inch Victors, and the few 7-inch Zonophones and Berliners. Yikes, what a dump. Anyway, what we see here is 16-inch transcriptions. And I don't know if you can see them very well or not, but there are 3 filing cabinets. The filing cabinets are filled with 16-inch transcriptions. All of the standard program library. More records, the computer I do all my work with. My turntable, this is a Audio-Technica USB 120. And here is a Gates turntable with a microtrack tone arm. Actually, this is the microtrack tone arm. This is an Imperial tone arm that came from a Reco-Cut. This is the workhorse that I use primarily for playing 16-inch radio transcriptions. And what a surprise, more records everywhere. Yes, there are records in these boxes too. Well, wasn't that fun? Now that you've seen the collection, I will highlight some of my favorites and oddities. Well, here's a rather unassuming blue box, but inside there are 25 vinyl 10-inch 78 RPM records intended for jukeboxes. Victory Glass is an outfit somewhere out in the Midwest that specializes in jukebox restoration. I believe the source material for this box set was basically alternate takes and rare radio recordings. Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Harry James, Jimmy Dorsey, Artie Shaw, Les Brown, Benny Goodman. All the big band favorites you can imagine are featured in here. And speaking of big bands, if you are a Glenn Miller nut like I am, there are 4 books in this series. So the book set contains about 4 to 5 12-inch LPs, all drawing from radio broadcasts. This is Volume 2, this is Volume 3, and this is Volume 4. A rather nice, exhaustive collection of Glenn Miller's Army Air Force Band. And of course, if you're talking about big band, you cannot forget about Benny Goodman. And of course, this is the infamous Benny Goodman Carnegie Hall Jazz Concert, 1938. 2 LPs. And here's one of 4 78s that were produced from that collection of Carnegie Hall recordings. Don't Be That Way, backed with Body and Soul. Nice record. And while we're on the subject of Benny Goodman, here is 78 RPM acetate, recorded off from the air. The radio announcer introduces this tune as Back Home Again in Indiana, but with a lineup like Wardell Gray on tenor saxophone, Red Rodney on trumpet, Billy Bauer on guitar, Mary Lou Williams piano, Clyde Lombardi bass, and Mel Zelnick on drums. What the audience was treated to was Donna Lee, a tune that was made famous by Charlie Parker. Incidentally, Charlie Parker did not write Donna Lee, Miles Davis did. So anyway, this was recorded off from the air. That was when Benny Goodman was dabbling in that strange new music known as bebop back at that time. And if you were a Benny Goodman nut like I am, your collection wouldn't be complete unless you happen to have Contrasts by Bartók, with Bela Bartók himself on piano, Joseph Szigeti on violin, and Benny Goodman on clarinet, on 2 12-inch 78 RPM Columbia records. And as an added bonus, my set happened to have had a newspaper clipping. I love picture records just as much as the next collector. Here is As Thousands Cheer by Paul Whiteman on RCA Victor. The other side, Let Them Eat Cake. Here's the more commonly found Music in the Air by Nat Shilkret. Also on the RCA Victor label. Speaking of RCA Victor, in the early 1930s, Victor was toying with long playing records that played at 33 1/3 RPM. I don't have the book, but I've got the 2 records that belong to the book. This is Skyscrapers, recorded by the Victor Symphony Orchestra under the direction of Nat Shilkret. It was composed by John Alden Carpenter. This is parts 1, 2, and 3. Side 4 is blank. Here's a nice fun one right here. This is for the Golden label, the children's record. This features the voices of Phil Rizzuto, Ralph Branca, Roy Campanella, Tom Henrik, but I like the other side. The other side is a recitation of Casey at the Bat by Mel Allen. Just imagine you're listening to Casey at the Bat as a radio broadcast. Great recording. Speaking of fun records, this is Jack Irving doing the Bum Song on a Canadian brown wax domino, a favorite of mine ever since I was a kid. Here we go, a picture postcard from the Bahamas. See, it's a postcard on one side. You've got a record on the other side. The selection is Wheel and Turn Me, and it is by Baba Mota and his orchestra. Here we go, Nelson Spearin on the Hamilton label. The Hamilton label was based out of Lincoln, Maine. Grandpa Rock, backed with I Can't Stop Loving You. Thank you, Tom, from Anti-Hero Records. Even has a signature of Nelson Spearin on there, with a message that says, Sleep tight and alone. If there's anybody who happens to have any information about the Hamilton label, please get in contact with me. I'd like to know more info about it. On the Fury label, Wilbert Harrison doing Kansas City. This goes down as one of my favorites ever since I was a kid. Another one of my childhood favorites, At the Hop by Danny and the Juniors on ABC Paramount. And of course you cannot have At the Hop without its sequel, Rock and Roll is Here to Stay. Danny and the Juniors. 2 more of my childhood favorites, both on the Demon label. Endless Sleep by Jody Reynolds and the Storms, and Western Movies by the Olympics. My baby loves the Western movies. Yeah, you remember that one. Alright, Link Ray fans, eat your heart out. This is Rumble, 78 RPM on the Cadence label, backed with the Swag. On the Vocalion label, of course the original issue was okay, Big Spiderbeck, In a Mist. Great record. Oh, here we go. Here's a fun one on the Hit of the Week label. The Maxwell House Orchestra, under the direction of Don Voorhees, Roll On, Mississippi, Roll On. The Hit of the Week records were sold on newsstands every Thursdays, I believe it was. And the years, I believe, was 1931 and 32. Incidentally, there's a clarinet break on this record. Is that Benny Goodman? Here's a record that is so stupid, I just love it. Pop Goes the Weasel by the RCA Victor Folk Dance Orchestra. 3 solid minutes of Pop Goes the Weasel. Note, this is a rather late pressing. Take a look at that label. Now, you cannot be a 78 collector without having Rivermont records. And I love these things. These are great. This is a 2 10-inch 78 RPM set of Brian Wright at the piano doing Bix Beiderbecke compositions. It's a Bix Beiderbecke's modern piano suite. Andy Shum and his Flatland Gang on the Rivermont label doing Dallin Nagalian and The Swing. And I've got 2 copies of Alex Mendham and his orchestra. Why do I have 2 copies? Because one is black vinyl and another is clear vinyl. Here's one of my absolute favorites. This is Sousa's Band doing Trombone Sneeze on a 7-inch Victor single-sided, recorded January 30, 1902. This is take number 1. I can hardly read this. This is George Schweinfest piccolo solo doing La Lanzanette Polka on a Berliner. Again, a rather fun record. Here's an oddity that I have no idea how I latched onto this one, but I'm glad I did. This is a vinyl pressing on the Ristic label. I think this is a label that belonged to John R.T. Davies. Both sides of this record utilize stampers that were either unissued or rejected. We have Bob Hudson on piano and Roy Palmer on trombone doing the Trombone Slide from 1932. And I believe this is a ARC stamper that was used, something that was to have been used for Brunswick or Mellotone or Perfect or Conqueror. Alex Combelli's Swing Band, Nerves and Fever, recorded in Paris in 1940. And I think this was something that was supposed to have appeared on the Swing label. Incidentally, some notable jazz players are on this side, such as Django Reinhardt on guitar. Great record. Here's an oddball record. In the countless 16-inch transcriptions that I have, and I've got thousands. Here's a Blue Wax, Columbia, electrical transcription, Schoolroom, Central Station Industry Exhibit, A Century of Progress, 1934. Plays at 33 1/3 RPM, and it starts from the inside out, plays for 15 minutes, start mark, and this is supposed to be played synchronous to some kind of a presentation. But what is interesting is that the first 9 minutes or so is silent, and then you've got about 3 minutes of spoken presentation, and then the remaining is all silent. And it's the exact same thing on both sides. A complete and total waste of 16-inch shellac, if you ask me, but nonetheless, it is interesting. I love anything historical, especially if it is radio-related. This is a set of 3 Columbia Blue Wax 12-inch 78s. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Oath of Office and Inaugural Address, March 4, 1933. Not my favorite president, but I really enjoy this particular recording. It was taken off from the air, I believe, CBS Radio. Oh, hey, here's the record that started this whole entire record collecting thing. Eddie Dean and his Boys, Rainbow at Midnight, backed with Kentucky Waltz on the Majestic label. I found this record while snooping around in my grandparents' closet. I've been hooked on 78s ever since. I've got a good-sized collection of Pathé marbled records. This is one of my favorites, the Golden Gate Orchestra, Brand New Mama. Great record, lots of fun. One of my favorite jazz 78s. This is Paul Quinochet's orchestra. Not really an orchestra, more like a sextet, I believe it is. The Rose of Birdland on Mercury features Count Basie on the organ. Incidentally, Rose of Birdland is a rewrite on Honeysuckle Rose. The other side is Galoshes and Rubbers, which is a rewrite on Topsy. Is everybody having fun? Because I know I am. Here is a Vogue picture disc that was given to me for my 11th birthday, I think. Lulabelle and Scotty, In the Doghouse Now, backed with Some Sunday Morning. That was by no means the only Vogue picture record I have. I've got about 50 of them. Here are 3 of my favorites, all by Charlie Shaver's Quintet. She's Funny That Way, Dizzy's Dilemma, Serenade to a Pair of Nylons. Here's Broad Jump. These are all really hot sides. This one is apparently the harder of the 3 to find. Ironically, this was the first one of the 3 I found. Musical Mania, backed with If I Had You. From December 1926, this is the Redheads, That's No Bargain, Splatterwax Pathé. Features Red Nichols and Miff Mole and Jimmy Dorsey and Dick McDonough, and fun record. Highly recommend. I heard this record years ago and I wanted it really badly, and I finally got it. This is the Hokum Boys, recorded in Chicago, December 1928. Selling That Stuff, Take 3, backed with Beetlum Bum, Take 2. The Hokum Boys, Tampa Red, and Georgia Tom. Isn't that a great record? Thank you, Warren, by the way. Thanks goes to Warren for another fun record. This is Jimmy Bertrand's Washboard Wizards on Vocalion. I had this record when I was in high school, and it was absolutely shot. I was totally overjoyed when this particular copy turned up, and it's a great copy, great sounding record. Ooh, shiny. This is Jimmy Bertrand's Washboard Wizards, struggling back with Little Bits on Vocalion. Featured Jimmy Bertrand on washboard, Jimmy Blythe on piano, and Johnny Dodd on clarinet. Look at that shine. Here's a record that I've got in a collection just because it's such a curiosity. It's on the Morrison label. I'm not even going to tell you who this is or what the selection is. All I will say is, not only does it look like vomit, it sounds like vomit. Sort of makes you wonder who the marketing genius was on this one. Alright, I pulled this one out for the benefit of Vermont Record Man. This is RCA Victor, Eddie Fisher, A Girl, A Girl. It's even autographed by Eddie Fisher. But what is interesting about this record is that you can do this. This thing is so thin you can almost cut your fingers with this. It's about as thin as those RCA Victor promo vinyl copies. Very unusual. This is the only one on this label that I've encountered like this. Here's a fun one. This is Clementine by Sonny Dunham and his Orchestra. It's a nice big band treatment of an old classic, and I love the graphics on this as well. It's kind of a old meets new. Other side is I Love You in the Daytime too. Very nice. I've got tons of jazz LPs, but this probably goes down as one of my absolute favorites. A rather obscure and rare one, Mary Osborne, A Girl and Her Guitar on the Warwick label. Great record. It's a promo copy. I've noticed that most collectors or admirers of Miles Davis prefer his Kind of Blue album. I like his Milestones album best. The record has seen better days. I am looking for a better copy, and I'm sure that most of you by now have heard or know that I have been feverishly collecting records that were recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio. So my 45s so far are contained in this nice platter pack container. I'll just highlight some of the better 45s. On the Rockland label, Jaguar, backed with Fly by the Tremolos. On the Rockland label, the Tremolos doing She Left Me, backed with Your Lovin' Man. Recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, Dick Curlis on Tower doing Tater Raisin Man. Also recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, Dick Curlis doing Please Don't Make Me Go. Also available as a promo copy, and pressed in Canada on the Capitol label. Recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio in 1968, this is the Barracudas doing Wait for Tomorrow and No Matter What You Do. It was also released nationally on the Smash label. Here's a record that I need an upgrade on. This thing is in such poor shape it sounds like it's been stashed under a lumber pile for 40 years. Paula Goodrich and Company doing Peanut Butter on the Area label. I love this one. This one's nice. The Mallet Brothers on the Rockland label doing No Deposit, No Return with Ori Dory in the back. Here's a nice one. This is 6 Cent Stamp backed with Everyone Will Know by Laurie. Laurie was Lorraine Toussaint. I believe she was from Presque Isle. She emailed me and she told me that when she did 6 Cent Stamp, she originally wrote it as 4 Cent Stamp. By the time she got around to recording it, the stamps had gone up from 4 to 6. That would have been January of 1968. Here's another great Rockland record. This is Ray Larson and the Mustangs doing Girl in the Afternoon, backed with Watermelon Man. And I could certainly use a better copy. Here we go. There it is, the holy grail of all Rockland records. This is the Marauders doing Bad Girl, backed with She's So Fine. There are some things about this record that does strongly suggest that this was recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, confirmation pending. This is The Significant Other. It's an all-girl group doing Ode to Carabasset Fats, backed with What Is the Reason. Here's a record that's just lots of fun. This is Judd Strunk doing the Santa Song. It was recorded in 1969, promoting moto ski snowmobiles. I do believe the records were given away as sales premiums whenever you bought a snowmobile. The Santa Song backed with a special Christmas tree. Linda J. and the Tumbleweeds, Love of the Common People, backed with Country Girl on the EC label, recorded in the Rockland Recording Studio. It's around 1970, I believe. This is great. This is also recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio. Roger and Diane doing Just in Case, written by Boodle O'Brien. Boodle O'Brien wrote a lot of songs for the Everly Brothers. Great record. The other side is Ori Dory. Here we have Bob Elston and the Road Rangers Band, recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio on the Lucky label, Mind Over Wine. And for all you psychedelic collectors, on the Laurie label, recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, this is Polymer's Children doing Good Vibes, backed with It's a Beautiful Day. Great record. From South Paris, Tom Davis and Friends doing Come With Me, backed with Simile to Summer on the Round Hole label, recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, 1972. You can tell that this guy was heavily influenced by the music of Chicago and perhaps Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Great arrangement, nice horns. Here's another record that's just good plain fun. This is The Main Attraction, Rosie Come On Down, backed with While Lovers Come and Go on the Blue Shades label, recorded at the Rockland Studio. That was around 1974. Also from around 1974, John Einason doing Somewhere in Maine, backed with Dancing in My Mind, recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio. And we've got some LPs that were recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio. This is Bob Giebelein doing Uncle Bobby's record. And I've got 2 copies here because one copy is a blue label copy, pressed in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and the other is a tan label copy, pressed at Southern Plastics. Here we go, Gary Meister on the Critique label, recorded at Rockland Studio. Here's a great album, Try It You'll Like It, featuring Bobby Geisen, Sonny Cardilli, Chris Rogers, Balzano Sisters, Tommy Thompson. Great record. Here's another great record, 21st Century Strings, Ray Maddie on electric mandolin, Sonny Cardilli on electric guitar, and Dave Nevins on electric bass guitar. Incidentally, Dave Nevins was, I believe, the nephew of Artie Nevins from the Three Sons. Here we go, the Harborside Gospel Quartet. There is my grandfather, his twin brother, and my uncle. Here's another nice record, 16 Strings by Bobby Geisen, Sonny Cardilli, and Dick Cash. Here we go, we've got another record by the Harborside Gospel Quartet. There's my grandfather, and that is his twin brother. And here's the last of the highlights. Recorded at the Rockland Recording Studio, Sonny Cardilli and his quartet. Nice and tasty. This record is practically legendary. It was incredibly hard to find. Sonny Cardilli on guitar, John Parker on bass, Brian Brown drums, Bill Gaudette on flugelhorn, and Bob Simpson on vibes. Around 1964, 1965, something like that. Alright, now that I've bored you to tears, time to bring this video to a close. So, I'm Spike Hyssong, and hope you enjoyed the video.